All right, so today we have a special episode. I am doing some pair programming with my friend Alex. Alex, you want to say hi?
Hey everybody.
So he created a sidebar that is mobile friendly and also works on desktop. So you can see it's right here. We can swipe it open and we can swipe it close with touch, or we can toggle it over here. And so this is what the mobile view looks like. And if we hop over here, you can go to the desktop. I can refresh this and I can click and I can see the sidebar pop open and close. So it's responsive, works for both clicking and touching. And it's also, we can see that it animates out. Not only that, it persists. So if I refresh the page, it will persist open like that. And if I close it, refresh, it'll stay closed. So in this video, we're going to just take a look at how he built this and some of the libraries he chose to use for this and just how the whole thing kind of works. So Alex, do you want to go ahead and take it over and show us what you did to actually get this working?
Yeah. My purpose of doing this is to try out some new libraries um, and to see how I would approach this component. So it's actually like a very common component, right? But it's actually surprisingly quite challenging for me. But I'm quite proud of the end result. So I'm if you're following, I'm on the index
Yep,
page.
I'm on the same file you are.
Yeah. So I'm building the sidebar component so that it would be sort of like a library. Um, so on the index page, when I consume the component, I can write a few lines to like using a few hooks, and then I will render out the sidebar, and all the animation and gesture and all that stuff will like magically happen. So that's the purpose of like that's the main challenge.
So you not only have a component that you render, but you also have hooks that you use, and the hooks are controlling the state. And so you can access the state from different components, not only just from the sidebar, right?
Yes.
And one thing I actually just noticed here is it looks like you have a hook that returns nothing.
Yes, so this is the hook that so I built it so that it works with a server-side render application.
Mm-hmm.
And the main challenge with that is when it's server when it's rendered on the in the server, it doesn't know whether it doesn't know anything about like your local storage. So it doesn't persist state, or it doesn't know if it's a mobile browser or a desktop browser. So the new sidebar layout, it's sort of like on mount, it will check all that data and then update the state accordingly.
Okay, so this is actually where you are doing a check, and I can click on it here and I can go to the utility of it. This is where you're actually doing a use mount, which is just a use effect underneath the hood. And this is where you actually check if they're on mobile or not, or if you have a persisted state.
Yes. So I use local storage here to check like the persisted state, like is it open or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I use window size to check whether it's mobile or not. This can be improved, but you get the idea.
Sure. This is just your checking with the width.
Yeah, so the main thing is like, let's say if it's mobile, then I want the width of the sidebar to be the full width when it's open. But if it's not in mobile, then I just want it to be like a fixed number of width. But
Yep.
this can be configurable by the end user if I want to like export it as a library. But for now, I just set it as a constant.
So use local storage. You have this as a hook here. That's interesting. What is the difference between, say, using a hook for this and just doing a local storage dot get item, for example?
Um, so so first of all, I'm using this is a Gatsby site, so you have to take care of server-side rendering.
You can only access local storage on the browser, so it's going to cause an error if you try accessing it, say in Gatsby when it's server-side rendering, right?
Yeah, so you have to check all that stuff, and also you like this is just like simpler. Like I don't have to parse from string to JSON and all that.
Okay, so it handles all the stuff. So like if you were going to write out this hook, I guess that what it would be is something like this at the end.
Yeah, something like that.
It's like you have to like do this check, and then you also have to check if this thing is null or whatever.
Yeah, and then like in the state you can have like set persistent state.
Okay, I see. So this is just a nice API over it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And where is this coming from? Is this something you built?
No, it's part of React Use, which is a pretty popular like collections of nifty React hooks.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this is where you're creating all the hooks, which you're using actually on the index over here. You use sidebar. Do you want to just walk us through what the heck the use sidebar hook does?
Yeah. So I'm using a library called Zustand, which like if you're familiar with Redux or like state management, it is a state management library. And the API for Zustand is hook first. So when I import create from Zustand and when I run the create function, it will give me a hook. And everything inside, like for example, is mobile, sidebar width, is open, toggle sidebar, all of this, you can access it when you like use this hook. And I also built like the middleware like persist and immer on top of Zustand so that it takes care of all the persistence, like save data on change to local storage, or immer will let me use the immer library.
So I'm guessing the persist guy here, he's saving every time you make a change to local storage, it'll actually, or every time you make a change to the state, it saves it to local storage. Is that what this persist function does?
Yes. So you see this toggle sidebar function, it's called set under the hood. So this is basically, think of it like a set state function. So so the persist middleware will hook up to the event of set. So whenever set is run, it will also do something in persist. So when set is run, the persist middleware will save the updated state to local storage.
Okay. And for anyone that's unfamiliar with what immer does, it lets you take a object, for example, the state here, and you can just mutate it. Like right here, he's mutating the is-open property, and then it's actually going to make an immutable change underneath the hood. So it's a very easy way to update objects.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the state that you're actually keeping track of in your entire application. I assume is this global state that you're keeping?
Yes. So Zustand will create sort of like a global store that every component can subscribe to. So I use this Zustand inside the sidebar component. And I also use it in the index component, and it is using the same store. So it's like a nicer API instead of using a React context, for example.
Okay. And so this state you have here. So these are properties you have available throughout your entire application. And then you have some functions as well, all the way down to here.
Yeah, so with Zustand, you can context. You can have like a property like Boolean, but you can also have functions inside like your context.
Yep.
So yeah, everything is sort of like inside the store, and you can do whatever with it.
Okay, can we go through a couple of what some of these functions do? I get the toggle sidebar that flips it on or off, and then you have some other ones going on here.
Yeah. So like I'm building it with animation, so I use a React Spring to do animation. And my purpose is I don't want the consumer to care about it. So index don't have to care about animation. Use sidebar style will handle animation, and it will return an object that you can put inside your sidebar, and it will animate for you.
Okay, so this is actually a style object, and you pass this style object to, say, an animated div, or an animated div is like something from React Spring. So this is a React Spring. The animation's all based on this library.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you look at this, I'm doing the translate X. So Um, if the state is open, then I want it to stay where it is. But if it's not, then I move it like 100. And in this case, 100 is 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So I move all of the sidebar to the left, which is just hide it.
Okay, and this takes care of it like animating open and closed smoothly, right?
Yes.
And so you just have to pass in. So can we see where you're using the use sidebar style? Is that in the index
Yeah, it's
page?
actually inside sidebar. Like
Okay.
if you scroll down a little bit, so you can see I run use sidebar hook, and it will return use sidebar style, and I run that hook to get the styles, and I destructure it in here.
Okay, and that's cool. That's where you pass the styles in. So this animated div is what your actual sidebar is.
Yes.
Cool. And okay, so this is also something that I found interesting. So you actually have your use sidebar hook returns a hook, and this hook you then call and pass the styles. So it's like a hook inside of a hook.
Also like use another hook too, so it's go a few level. I don't know if like it can very well be an anti-pattern or something,
Uh-huh.
but it's working. So
This is
I guess.
this is kind of an interesting way to do this. I actually kind of like it. I haven't seen this type of style before. What I am used to seeing is, let's say you create like another hook, which you just you call your use sidebar style, or actually let's sidebar style. Like you have your hook like this. Like let's say I was creating this function here.
Yeah.
Let's pop him up here. This is what I'm used to seeing. Is I create the hook outside, and then like for example, this particular hook would then get the, current state is equal to, and then like for example, this might be use sidebar state, and this would get access to your sidebar state, and then you use this to see if the sidebar is open or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, I think that is another approach. I don't know which is better. Um,
Yeah, I don't know
yeah, I
either.
guess
I kind of like what you did here, because it's actually pretty nice that you can just have it reliant on this one immer function you're using up here. I think the way you did it, actually, you probably reused the code pretty well. But this is my first time seeing this kind of a hook inside of a hook, and so you actually call a hook to get a hook that you call.
Yeah, so like that is sort of like the reason why I kind of want to talk to you about this,
Mm-hmm.
because this is like this is like I'm experimenting.
Yeah.
So I have not used this before, and I'm afraid I may be like going crazy here. So I want to talk to you like someone who like know his stuff.
Yeah.
Make sure that I'm not doing something like completely stupid, you know?
Yeah. I mean, looking at this, I think it looks pretty good. Like, I would not have any problems using an API like this.
Nice. Yeah, I'm glad. That makes me very happy. So the main style is similar,
Yeah, it looks like
but
it's
it's for
it looks like it's similar to use sidebar, but you use it for the main content, you said?
yes. So it's like the margin left, so that when the sidebar is there, then it would move the main along with the sidebar.
Yeah. And we already talked about use sidebar layout. That's what you're using to actually check whether or to update whether it should be open or not based on the persistent state.
Yeah, so this is the most tricky part. Like this is the server side rendering stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite new to it. So like my first iteration, I didn't have this, and it works normally when it's like just client side rendering. But when I like build the Gatsby side and run it, I then notice like some problems, and it took me a while to like figure it out and how to tackle this.
Yeah. And so basically it looks like what you're doing also is you default and you assume that the user is mobile. And then whenever you first mount, you then check the width of the screen to decide if they're actually mobile or not. And then that's where you will actually update it if necessary.
Exactly, and I am very glad you brought that up because there's a reason why I default to mobile.
Uh-huh.
um, and also default to is open to be false. Um, Actually, more about like is open to be false. The
Mm-hmm.
reason why is if it's false, then it's hidden. Um, so so when the user go to the site, if the sidebar happens to be true, then it will just animate out
Yeah.
and it would look fine. However, if you default it to be true, then if the user hide the sidebar every time they refresh, they will see the sidebar animate in.
Yeah, so it looks better to animate out than it does to animate in. Makes sense.
Yes.
And the reason why you have to do all this, right, is because with Gatsby, it's going to actually like take a snapshot of your screen, and then when it loads, it hydrates, and it's actually going to check. So the first initial screen you're going to see with Gatsby, it doesn't know whether the user is on mobile or not.
Yes.
And that's
So
something where you can also like, this is where, for example, you can compare it with, like, I guess I don't know if you consider it dynamic server side rendering, but if you're using a framework like Next.js, that's where on the server side you could actually do some of these checks, and you could update the HTML on the fly on the server side so it's correct right when it sends to the client. So
sort of.
it's a
Um, I
trade-off, but
actually
yeah.
I actually do test it with Next2,
Uh-huh.
and it will also perform, like do the same thing. But I think with Next, there's an option, like there's a way for you to pass cookies from the
That
browser to the server to
exactly.
check this kind of stuff.
Yep, you could check the you could check the cookies. You could also check the user agent that the like when my browser sends to you. And so like this is one way. This is like layers of complexity which may or may not be worth it. But you could check the user agent and parse that, and that'll tell you roughly what device they have. And from
Yeah.
that you can like get the screen size and kind of more an
Yeah. So
educated guess, I guess.
yeah, it makes the UX a little bit better. Um,
It's but again, I personally I think like it makes the user experience like 1% better. Like it's not a huge jump, and so actually, if I was choosing if I was building something like this is not something where I would actually like choose to do Next.js style server side rendering. I don't think the added effort of that is worth it. I actually think it's totally fine to just check this on the browser.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that was a good choice, and I guess let's go check out the next function you have here, use drag sidebar.
Yeah, so the next two use drag sidebar and use drag main is to detect the swipe or like the gesture. So on mobile, you can like swipe right to open the sidebar and swipe left from the sidebar
Mm-hmm.
to close it. Um, so basically, use drag sidebar. I use drag, which is a library like React use gesture. Um,
And
to
this is
get
coming.
data like
Okay, so this is actually coming from a React use gesture library. Okay, so this is a separate one.
yeah. So I can get like direction data, the velocity of the swipe, and last is basically just like did the user finish swiping basically.
I see. So are they currently still swiping or not?
Yeah. So if it's last, and I check a direction, the first one. So the direction value would be an array of two value. The first is horizontal value. So
Mm-hmm.
if it's negative value, then the user is swiping left, and and if it's positive, then the user is swiping right. So I'm checking if the first value, like the horizontal direction,
Yep.
to be smaller than some threshold, um, to basically indicate it, are they swiping left, and check if it's last, meaning did they finish swiping?
Okay, so this you did some math to decide whether they're like swiping to the left or swiping to the right to decide whether to open or close it.
Yeah, but I mean, you see the code I write, like there's no math in it. I'm just using,
The use drag.
yeah, so it's pretty nice. I enjoy it.
Okay, and you
And
used. I see. I guess you don't actually decide whether it. I guess you just call toggle sidebar. You don't even decide whether you need to go left or right. You just toggle where the opposite of what it is.
yeah, yeah. So if the user swipe left on the sidebar, meaning the user wants to close it, so I close it. Um,
And does this need like a ref to it? How do you actually use drag main and use drag sidebar?
you do need a ref or like a binding. So if you in here, they use
Okay, yeah, I see. Yeah.
sidebar. I bind it to the sidebar. And if you go back to the index page, I use the main stop, the use drag main, and I bind it to the main section.
And then you don't bind it if it's on mobile because there's no main section to bind. Is that?
No, no, no.
Oh, you bind it only if it is mobile.
Yeah. So if you are on the screen, maybe you want to highlight something, and I don't want to trigger like open or not, like because on if you're on desktop, you don't want to swipe.
Yep.
Like, you don't want to click and drag to open the animation. So I just don't use it.
Okay, so you only do this on mobile because that's when they're actually going to be swiping. Makes sense.
Yes. And right now it's quite simple. Like I just toggle it, but I can make it to be like very fine grain. Like I can set the position of the sidebar and that sort of things according to how much, like how far have they swiped. But I think it's way too much work for like slightly better UX for now.
Yeah.
I'm just happy with this.
Cool. So that's the Zustand's state and all the functions you have. Is there anything else that you wanted to go over with this?
Yeah, that's about it. And then you can see like the main thing, like the sidebar. I'm binding like just animation and drag,
Mm-hmm.
and then on the consumption side, like I'm using all this stuff, but mainly just um, animation, drag, and the view sidebar layout. Um, and if I were to make this a library, then sidebar would take like a lot more props, like children and that sort of things.
Yeah.
Um, but for right now, like this is kind of like a proof of concept of how like a library-ish style sidebar would work.
And one of the cool things also that I recently learned about Zustand is you actually don't need to actually create a top level provider. Like, for example, with Redux, you usually create a top level provider, or if I'm using context, I'll create a top level provider. You can actually just use the use sidebar hook that you create from Zustand. You can just use that wherever you want, and the state is automatically global and accessible everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's pretty sweet.